2 weeks of work for almost 6 grand. How could I refuse? That was what I thought when looking at that bizarre listing in an email I had received. It said temporary night security needed for local, antique, and clothes shop. 2-week contract, $6,000 upon completion of contract. I was shocked that it was still available. When I had contacted the store, the owner had answered the call and had told me I was hired on the phone without even asking for any references or my application. I had never actually worked security before, but I was on the larger side and trained in self-defense and knew how to aim a flashlight, so I figured I could give it a shot. I had just been laid off at my previous job due to downsizing, and even though security work is not my specialty, I told myself I would make it work for that sort of money. Part of me was thinking even back then what the catch was to be getting that much more than minimum wage, but beggars can't be choosers. I left with plenty of time to find the place and arrive without being late. It was a strange little store down a disturbingly barren stretch of road, almost 2 miles from the nearest shopping center. Kind of a bad place if they are trying to sell anything, but I guess it didn't matter as long as their money was good. I pulled into a dingy parking lot and saw a faded little sign that indicated the business was known as the Proud Tailor. They apparently sold antiques and old apparel. They must have made a solid business to pay this much for security. I wondered why it was so much and why it was only 2 weeks though. I guess that it didn't matter, and got out of my car taking my flashlight since it was already very dark and there was little in the way of parking lot lights out here. As I walked through the lot, I almost walked right past the entrance. I had to turn back and do a double take. It was odd, but it almost seemed when looking at it from the right angle to sort of look blurry, almost like a heat mirage. I was interrupted from the strange daze when another car arrived in the lot. I walked over to it and met my contact, Mr. Jaspin. He regarded me curtly, thanked me for being on time, and then immediately, without skipping a beat, launched into a tirade of rules for this job that I felt I would need a notebook just to write down and keep track of. "Excuse me, sir, what?" was the first of many interjections I had made when hearing the bizarre tasks I was now expected to perform at my new, albeit temporary, place of employment. Yes, I know it sounds weird, but the owner is a pretty weird man, honestly, but he pays well considering. He put on his best appealing smile and continued with the weird list. I listened with increasing incredulity to this man, who besides the owner on the phone, was the only contact I had made thus far when taking this job. After he had gone over 6 of them, I made a note list on my phone and had him repeat several of them. "Oh my," he said in a somewhat condescending tone, "I hope your observational skills are better than your listing ones." "Very well, once more, here are the rules." I was annoyed by the insult, but was ready with my note app this time. "Hours of security will be from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. No taking breaks in the store. Breaks must occur in the external security booth. Lunch break must occur at 2:30 a.m. and must not occur in the building. No touching of any merchandise, especially no touching of displays. At 1 a.m. precisely, the customer bathroom must be inspected and cleaned if necessary. If there is trash in the receptacle near the back room, please dispose of in the locking dumpsters outside. No staring at any displays. Back room is off limits except in emergencies situation. Trespassers are to be detained and are contact with the police if to be called to arrange removal. Is that all? I thought there was a lot, I said, half smirking and nervously laughing a bit after Mr. Jaspin had finished speaking. I gave up on humor when he glowered back at me and decided I should just listen. His friendly demeanor was broken, and he flatly stated that the rules are the rules for a reason. Keep to them, and there will be no problems. If you do not follow them, then we cannot guarantee you're safe. He paused mid-sentence and corrected, "Cannot guarantee full compensation for the services rendered. Please abide by them at all times." He humorlessly bid me good night and left, leaving me alone in the parking lot without even having a proper tour of the inside of the building I would be guarding, or any other type of orientation beyond the meticulous listing of rules. This was really weird, and I found myself wishing I had found something a bit more run-of-the-mill and less bizarre, even if it paid less. But I reminded myself of how much money it would be, and I decided to try and ignore the nagging feeling in my gut and get to work, whatever that looked like here. I took a quick stroll around the perimeter of the store. It was not too big, but something about it made walking near and around it feel like it took longer than it should have. It felt like with how small it appeared from the parking lot I could be around the building in 2 minutes flat, but somehow it took me 5 minutes to get back to the front where I had started. I brushed it off as maybe just being distracted by the new scenery and the barren surroundings, perhaps as well the unerring darkness and quiet surrounding the place. At least without light pollution, the moon was visible, but it was faint, and everything was still very dark. I decided to head to the security booth and get set up. The security room, if you could even call it a room, and not just a repurposed tool shed, was very dingy. At least it was well lit since it was so small the single overhead light bulb made it so. There was a small CCTV, which appeared to be connected to 3 security cameras positioned in the store. I went to switch them on, but they appeared to be dead. I saw a note attached below one of the monitors indicating that the cameras were out of service, and that a manual inspection of the building would be required at 1-hour intervals. There was an antique-looking brass key that I figured must be the store's key. I pocketed it and sat down. I was not sure what to do in the booth out here without working cameras. Just watch for people trying to break in around the lot maybe. I figured I would patrol the perimeter every 30 minutes to get some steps in and see if anything was happening, in between checking in on the store and patrolling inside per the hour mandate mentioned on the note. I brought a few books to read while waiting between patrols and tried to get comfortable on the hard steel chair I had been given to sit on in the security station. I thought that maybe they could afford to pay so much for the security job because they didn't spend a dime on any amenities for actual security personnel. After an uneventful hour of sitting in the security shack, as I started to call it, since anything more formal would be an insult to actual security stations, I realized I had to get up and head inside to do my rounds for the first time. I grabbed my flashlight and walked to the front door again. I saw the strange distortion near it once more and wondered what in the world could cause that hazy effect. I hoped it was not a gas leak or something. I fumbled with the odd key for a moment, and the door creaked open on loud hinges. It was freezing inside, somehow even colder than outside. I didn't think that was possible unless they had some sort of air conditioner on, which would be bizarre since it was winter. I was wishing I had brought a warmer coat, but I had a job to do, so I pushed inside through the frigid air and into the store proper. There was minimal lighting inside when it was closed. I was glad I had my flashlight, but still wished there were at least a few overhead lights I could turn on while patrolling. Every switch I had found appeared to be shut down, and no additional lights could be turned on. The main floor was not too large, and I decided to just do a circuit around the floor and then once through the middle and call it good. I took a small path to the right and past some shelves with musty books and library paraphernalia. Rounding the corner, I saw some very disturbing looking mannequins near the back wall. They were all wearing old-fashioned and ornate Victorian-era clothing. The faces and general air of the looming figures was very creepy, and I didn't like how as I walked the heads always seemed to be facing me, but I figured I was just a bit creeped out by the strangeness of this store and would get used to it on subsequent patrols. I saw near the mannequin wall a door and restroom sign and knew that was on my checklist. I thought I might just clear it now, but the rules said to check at 1 a.m. exactly, so I decided to abide by them and check back then. I kept walking, passing by racks of old clothes and wall displays of tools off relics and even some weapons. I didn't see anything out of order on my rounds for the first time, at least whatever order looks like for that weird store. I looked back briefly into the freezing store and closed and locked the door again and returned to the security shack. I went through the motions several more times. Uneventfully, I had taken my break and just read straight through it. I thought about the break rule, and I didn't know who would be crazy enough to want to take a break or a lunch in that musty refrigerator with those creepy mannequins watching you. At 1 a.m., I checked the bathroom. It looked unused, and fortunately there was no mess to clean up. I was about to leave when I saw faint red stains near the basin of the sink. I turned on the water and used some antibacterial wipes to clean it away. I didn't know what it was, but it may have been blood, so best to take precautions. When leaving, the creepy mannequins caught my eye again, and I could have sworn I saw an odd red stain on the coat of one that was not there before. I took the garbage from the bathroom, and as I was heading out I remembered I had to check the other garbage and looked by the backroom door to see a portable garbage can. It was very heavy, and I wondered how they could produce this much waste in a day. I took both garbages out back and took them out to a sealed dumpster. Inside the heavy can was a triple sealed bag. It smelled pretty bad, and I didn't even want to know what kind of funky stuff was in it. I pulled the lever on the dumpster to lower the tray and put the bulging garbage bag on, along with the smaller bathroom garbage. I pushed it back into place and heard a heavy thumping fall and kind of an eerie squishing sound. I don't even want to know, I thought to myself yet again. That night, I returned to the security shack and sat back down. The rest of the first night was uneventful, and I was hopeful it would stay that way for the next couple weeks, and I could just get my payday and not spend any more time at this bizarre place. The next 2 days were fairly uneventful, though the mundane nature of those 2 nights meant that when the hammer fell I was too comfortable and was less prepared for the insanity of the next night. It was Thursday, my 4th night, and I had arrived a little late when I started my patrol. I had found broken glass out near the back where the dumpster was. I thought it was odd, but I was a bit more concerned when I noticed that amidst the glass was what looked like clothing fabric and traces of blood. This set me on edge, but I couldn't find anything else nearby, so I reluctantly returned to the security shack. I wished that I had been given a contact number besides the police line that, according to the rules, was meant only for then we needed to detain trespassers. I thought maybe I would make a note of it and ask Mr. Jaspin when I spoke with him next. It was time to go in the store and do my rounds. It was bitterly cold as usual, and I saw as I was walking around that some displays had been knocked over, and there was a bit of a mess in the aisles. It was strange that whoever had closed had not cleaned it up. I was told not to even touch the merchandise, so I didn't know if I should put it back or not. I decided in this case it might be okay. I was not going to steal anything after all, so I bent down and started collecting a few articles of clothes and placing them back onto the clothes rack. When I finished, I looked around and was shocked when the mannequins all seemed to be looking directly at me, not just the ones on the wall, who were already facing the center, but the other ones as well. I was getting a bit freaked out, and I started to hear a high-pitched buzzing noise as well. I resolved to finish up and get out of there as quickly as I could. Then I realized, to my misfortune, I had to use the bathroom just then. I ran away from the staring eyes of the mannequins and used the customer restroom where I always did, since the security shack had no facilities. When I finished, I decided to just take the trash out now and clean up the bathroom. It was only 11 p.m., but I figured I had already touched the merchandise, so why not just get the bathroom done while I was at it? One less thing to worry about later. The garbage by the back room seemed to be empty, so I left and returned to the security shack. At 1 a.m., I went back inside to do my rounds again, but something was off. The building was slightly warmer, and I noticed that a rather foul smell was coming from the bathroom. I had just cleaned there, I thought. How is that possible? I opened the door, and somehow the garbage was full of strips of bloody cloth and surgical needles, the sort of thing normally needed to be disposed of in a biohazard crate. There were other less obvious things in the bin, and after my disgust at the smell died down, I paused and became very concerned. I had already cleaned this out. How the hell did this get here now? Was someone else here? I suppressed a shudder and decided to step outside. As I was leaving, I heard the smash of glass, and it sounded like it was coming from outside. I ran outside and saw a figure sprinting around the corner of the store. I dropped the bag of garbage and shouted, "Stop," as loud as I could, but they raced on, and I gave chase. They were moving so quickly I knew I couldn't catch up. Then they slipped on something and fell. As I caught up, I saw what turned out to be a small pool of some liquid. I raced over to the prone form and found a young man. He was panting hard, and what appeared to be blood was all over him. I didn't know if he was possibly a threat. He looked more scared than dangerous, but if he was desperate to get away, he could be unsafe, so I approached slowly. He was small and fairly young, maybe 18 or 19, had no remarkable features besides a faint scar over his right eyebrow and some sort of tree branch tattoo on his right forearm. "Holy hell, dude, you scared the hell out of me. What are you doing?" I asked him, out of breath and trying to regain my composure. "Phew," he started. "You have to help me," he blurted out, still panic-stricken about something. I didn't know what he was doing. All I heard was glass breaking somewhere, and he was there taking off running. His behavior did not seem to indicate vandalism. But why was he here? "Slow down and tell me what happened. Who are you and what were you doing here?" I asked him as calmly as I could to try and help the situation. Okay, just..." He took a deep breath and continued, "Just please listen. I need to find my sister. She was at this store or whatever this place is when it was somewhere else. and she went missing. I listened to him as panic and frenzy started welling up in his voice again. I don't know how this place is here, or why it is, but I need to find her before it is gone again. It looked like he was speaking sincerely even though I couldn't make sense of it. What do you mean before it's gone again? I asked. This place, this weird store, it was in a shopping mall. This exact store. You mean they moved here? I tried to clarify. No, this exact store. He shouted back at me. But friend, I don't know what you think is going on here, but I assure you it is just us here. Your sister's not here. No one else is even here right now. And it looks like you are in a bad way, I said as I looked at his haggard appearance and the blood staining his clothes. I tried to calm him down and managed to take him to the security shack. I told him I would call the police line I was given and that they could help him find his sister. I didn't know if he was delusional or schizophrenic or something, but I figured I needed help in this case, so I finally called the number. There was a substantial wait considering it was supposed to be a police line, and someone finally answered. Stanton speaking was the terse and fairly agitated voice on the other line. I explained the situation to him, and I thought I heard an annoyed groan suppressed on the other line filled by a quick, "I will be right over, hold him and wait." And the line went dead. "Real cheery fellow," I muttered sarcastically to myself. The young man who still hadn't given me his name was sitting on the floor in the shack, not taking his eyes off the main building. He wouldn't speak anymore, but the panicked look never left his eyes. I started to second guess myself and thought maybe something was in there. I did not know for certain everything that was in that place, like the back room for example. Then I thought of the weird garbage I saw after I had already cleaned it. I tried to break the awkward silence, and I asked him about his tattoo he had. "That's cool. What is that supposed to be?" I asked him. He paused as if considering if he should answer, then he finally responded and said, "It's a hazel branch. My sister and I each have one in honor of our mother who passed away." They waited for a little over an hour. I was wondering if the officer was going to show up and consider calling the normal emergency services, but I didn't want to get in trouble if it broke the rules. I needed that money. It was almost my lunchtime, and I was getting hungry and impatient. I was about to call again when I heard a blood-curdling scream from what sounded like inside the store. Before I knew what was going on, the man stood up and rushed out and sprinted to the main door, taking the keys with him. He knocked me out of my chair, and I fell hard to the ground. I didn't have time to stop him. He was in the store before I could get up and chase after him. Once I got to my feet and rushed for the building as I saw the lights of a patrol car approach. The large man stepped out. I didn't recognize the uniform. Something seemed off. Then I realized even though he wore a police uniform, there were not any identifying features on it, besides just looking like a generic police outfit. His car too, though it had lights, did not appear to be city, state, or county sheriff. I did not know what was up, but right then I didn't care. We needed to see what was going on inside with that scream. And with the young man, I explained the situation, and the man, Stanton as he said his name, looked at his watch and grimaced. "Oh damn, why did it have to be now?" He looked concerned, and I was about to ask him what was wrong when he put a hand up and told me in no uncertain terms, "Thank you for the heads up. I will handle it from here." I was confused. "Wait, handle it? Don't you need help in there? What are we going to do?" I asked, trying to hide my own nervousness. "No sir," he responded curtly. "It is 2:30 a.m. and you have a lunch to attend and face. For that matter, considering the situation, why don't you take the rest of the night off? It's not gonna be safe in there, and the professionals will handle it." "Wait, what? What do you mean?" I stammered out. "Someone is in there, and possibly someone else who needs help, or someone or something dangerous. Don't you need backup or something?" I asked, feeling the tension increase. He paused for a moment and looked very threatening as he shifted his gaze back towards me. "I already called backup. They will be here shortly. Thank you again. But you have to leave now." "But don't you at least need a statement or something?" I asked, not wanting to be left out of whatever was happening, since something didn't feel right. "I just took your statement. Now I am afraid I am going to have to insist." As he finished the statement, he rested his hand on the grip of his firearm, and I took the hint from there. This all felt wrong. I did not want to leave, but he had made it clear I didn't have much of a choice. I considered calling the emergency line and checking if this guy was legit, but as I walked away I noticed my phone was missing. I looked back and the man, Stanton, was speaking on his own phone. I couldn't hear everything, but I made out a few words: dangerous and handled. I got to my car and was idling for a bit when I heard a loudspeaker yell out that I needed to go now. This is a potential crime scene. Clear off, or you will be prosecuted," Stanton called out by the door holding a megaphone. I took one last look behind, and I left. I still feel guilty about that decision. I didn't know what happened, but it all felt wrong. Maybe I could have done more. I did not hear anything in the news about what happened the next day, and was eager for any information. I considered calling Stanton again to see what happened, but I decided against it, and called the line I had used to inquire about the position. And the line was disconnected now. What the hell was going on? I wondered. I arrived a little early just to see what happened. I thought the store hours should have seen it open right now, but it was locked up and no one was around. I wondered if they had been open at all today. I checked the security shack, and as expected, no note, no nothing, no indication of anything that had happened. I stepped inside for my first patrol, and I did not see anything amiss. The garbage was very full, but besides that, everything seemed spotless. I couldn't find anything wrong, no signs of a struggle. No one was around. What the hell happened here? I said softly to myself. I kept walking, and I heard a crunch under my foot. I thought I had stepped on glass, but I was shocked and somewhat horrified when I saw I had stepped on and crushed my own cell phone. I must have dropped it there, but I can't remember doing it. Besides having a cracked screen now, it looked like it was covered in a dark brownish liquid. I shuddered when I brought it closer to my face, and I smelled the metallic tinge of blood. What the hell? I looked around a bit more, and couldn't find any other evidence of last night's events. I had a bad feeling something very wrong had happened here. At 1 a.m., I returned and checked the bathroom. It was spotless, and no garbage was in there. I left, but I noticed the chill in the building had returned, and I swear I had seen a light from underneath the backroom door. Only one more work week. You can do this, just one more week, I muttered to myself like a mantra, and left. Surprisingly, the next 4 days did not have anything strange in store for me. Yet, because of how uneventful and mundane they were, it gave me a growing sense of dread that something was going to happen. Yet day after day of tense anticipation, there was nothing. On the last day of all days, I saw the thing that I can never unsee, the thing that leads me to writing this account and trying to find any trace of that nightmarish hellscape masquerading as a quaint clothes store. It seemed like the last couple of nights at first, and I was grateful, since after that night I would be able to get my payday and be done with this sketchy store. On my first patrol, I took the garbage bin by the back room out since it was almost overflowing. It was incredibly heavy, and as I pulled it along, I must have hit a large rock with a wheel, and it went tumbling over. That very same rock, or friction, or whatever force in play, must have succeeded in cutting open one of the normally sealed bags, and when it splayed its contents out, I thought I was going to vomit, pass out, or scream. Instead, I just looked on in horrified confusion as there were what appeared to be pounds of bloody rags, rusted surgical equipment, and some strips of unidentifiable flesh. The gory bag was inexplicable, and my mind raced to try and find some explanation for the grisly contents of the bag. Was someone here doing illegal surgeries or something? What the hell is this? I thought of Mr. Jaspin and his creepy smile, the owner who I had spoken with on the phone but never met in person, and the weird police officer, if he really was one. I felt panic sinking in at how I was involved in whatever this mess was, trying to help them guard whatever this place really was. I had not thought to arrive too early on any day except one to check for sure, but when I didn't see any employees here, much less any customers. Hell, I had never even seen this store open, if it really was a store. I was wondering if I was even going to be paid, or if something bad might happen to me. I left the gruesome bag where it was. I was not going to put my hands on potential evidence, but I realized in horror as I returned to the security shack that I had indeed done just that. Now could I really tell someone else? No one else was here, just me and a bag of bloody evidence of something having happened. If something illegal was happening, how would I prove I was not involved? It's been just me here for 2 weeks. I thought of the young man too, the intruder a few nights ago. I wish I knew what they had done with him. There were too many bad things that could have happened, and I felt sick at the implication of all of them. I felt guilty too, yet I did not know what I could do now, so I resolved to just finish the night and hopefully get paid, and then maybe put in an anonymous report when I was done with these people. I sat and brooded and became more and more paranoid as the night went on. I did not do my rounds around the store since I had no wish to pass that horrifying bag of organic detritus again. I decided near the end of the night to go into the store one more time and break one of the rules. I had to know if someone was in the back room. Was there someone there the whole time at night? Were they responsible for the strange events that had occurred? At 5 a.m., on my last patrol, I summoned the courage to do it. I went inside, and it felt even colder than it had on previous nights. I slowly approached the backroom door and bent down to see if I saw light on the other side. My suspicion was confirmed. There was a faint glow. I paused briefly, took a deep breath, grasped the handle, and slowly turned it. It was unlocked. The smell was awful, and I instinctively recoiled before going in. How had I not smelled this on patrol in the store? I had no idea how it could be this bad, and not smell it through the door unless this was recent. I went into the nauseous miasma, covering my whole face. As I did so, there was a bright lamp in the corner by the door that had been illuminating the area, and there were shelves with boxes and various office-like debris around. The back room stretched further down a small hall to the left of the door, and I followed it. This room was not so well lit, so I pulled my flashlight back out and switched it on and almost dropped it and screamed. The light, as soon as it was switched on, was shining on two hideous mannequins sitting on what looked like some sort of workbench. They were both sitting upright and staring straight forward, as if watching the backroom door for anyone who came in. I let out an exhale as I tried to calm down, realizing it was just more mannequins, and regretting the action, as I did, since it meant I had to inhale more of the horrible air back there. Against better judgment, I stepped forward cautiously to get a better look. The faces on them were horribly lifelike, and something about it was morbidly mesmerizing. I leaned forward to get a look at the one on the left, wearing a dark sleeveless jacket that looked fancy and expensive. The face was hideous, and somehow it looked like they designed it to be in pain or some other less describable emotion. The surface looked so realistic as well, it almost looked like it had human skin. Despite the awful appearance, something looked weirdly familiar, and I noticed an old-looking scar above the eyebrow of the thing. How would a mannequin have a scar? I was puzzled. I felt a rising sense of fear as I looked at the lifelike thing, and I reached out and touched the hand, and my blood ran cold. I felt the hand, and it felt warm. I could feel small hairs as well on the surface of the skin, and my mind couldn't handle what happened next. I looked further up the arm and turned it over to see on the forearm a small tattoo of what I recognized as a hazel branch. I remember trying to scream, but only a strangled gasp escaped my mouth. I looked to the female mannequin to the right and saw on its left arm the same tattoo. My mind couldn't reconcile the horrifying truth of the situation. And then, whether it was the breathing in of the foul odor, or the disgusting pouring out of what I knew to be human bodies turned into these display cases of perversion, I vomited on the floor and nearly toppled over. I stood there doubled over, panting and retching as I finally regained a bit of composure. It was then that the crowning horror occurred. I still don't know to this day if it really happened, or my disturbed mind just conjured it from the shock of the situation and the memory of speaking to that young man who had broken in that night looking for his sister. But as I stood slowly back up, there was a splitting, tearing sound like flesh and muscles breaking stitches, and I heard a wheezing, croaking voice mumble the words, "Join us." All semblance of sanity in that moment snapped, and I fled the store, grabbed my stuff from the security shack, and drove off as fast as I could, laughing like a lunatic at the impossibility of the situation. I didn't want to be implicated in the situation, so I made an anonymous call to the authorities about what I suspected was some sort of murder, body mutilation, or organ harvesting operation. I did not know if the owner, whoever he might be, would try and cover it all up, but I really was not expecting what I heard when I tried to follow up the next day. I was chastised for making a false report and was warned about wasting police time and effort, and how they did not appreciate being sent out to the middle of nowhere for serious crime allegations. I didn't understand, and I asked what they meant. Apparently there had been an investigation, and nothing was turned up, not because of a cover-up, because nothing was there to investigate. There was no store, no business registered at that location, apparently not even a building there, just an empty patch of land. I couldn't believe it. It was impossible. I decided to drive out there and check myself. To my complete shock, sure enough, everything was gone. Not just the store, but the sign, the dumpsters, and the security shack. Everything. It is like it had never existed. How could they remove the entire store in one night and make it look like it was never here? My mind was grasping at rational solutions, but I could conjure none. I tried calling the number I had called to inquire about the job again, but it was still disconnected. I double-checked the email I had received the job listing from, and somehow it had vanished as well. I even looked online for the business, and all I found when looking for the Proud Tailor were some online shops that sold generic clothes. No odd Victorian-style clothes shops of that name in this city, this state, or even this country. Nothing. What could I do? No trace was left to investigate. No one would be able to find who owned or operated that nightmare building. There would be no closure for whoever their victims were. As far as the world seemed concerned, the store didn't exist. I started doubting my own sanity. Over the next few weeks, I wondered if somehow all that time had been some sort of hallucination, or a terrible lucid dream, or more like a nightmare. I couldn't sleep for the last few days, so I started writing down the events as I remembered them, whether they really happened or not. However, I received something today that gave me my answer, and I wish to God it hadn't, because what I received is proof that it all happened, and I don't think I can bear the thought of those monsters still existing out there somewhere in the world, wherever they went. What I received was a small manila envelope in the mail. It had no return address indicated on the front, but it was addressed to me, and when I opened it I couldn't believe what I saw. It was $6,000 in cash. Many of the bills looked tinged by a reddish-brown substance, and a small note simply saying, "Thank you for your services."